I made an AI data analyst that looks into your company data and actually gives you useful insights to grow your business. I will go over the code, actually share the whole code base with you and help you set it up. It's very easy and obviously free. So let's go with the video. I implemented an AI for a manufacturing company that makes more than $6 billion per year to save them more than $40,000 a year. And the actual AI that I implemented was an AI data analyst. What is this exactly? Well, it's an AI that looks at a bunch of data and is able to understand what's going on with that data and give insightful information to the people working in that company. So let me take a step back and explain how we got to this solution. First, they had a problem understanding what was going on in their manufacturing pipelines. So as you saw in this image, these are like very complex pipelines, like with many robots, many machines working at the same time. And they were gathering tons and tons of data from all the robots, all the machines, but they didn't know what to do with that. So they had a person working here full time, just making different analysis, making different plots, making different things. So basically they had a person hired full time just to understand all of this data, create plots and see what's going on. So my solution to them was, let's create an AI that does exactly that. It looks into a database with all of that data that I said and creates different plots and helps users do analysis and answer questions automatically. Again, of course, because of an NDA, I cannot show you the actual product and the actual data of their databases, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to create it again from scratch. So like a simple version here done for you, and you can take the code and use it for your business or your data. So I'll share it for free, obviously, and I'll show you how to use it. So let's go with the design, which is the most important part when you're coding with AI, because that's what we're going to do. So the first thing that we want to have is a front-end user interface. So it will be like a chat user interface, right? Chat user interface. So we'll have a chat user interface that receives user messages, right? And sends them to AI. Basically, that's a simple chat flow, basically, right? User message, user query, let's say, user query into AI. Simple enough, right? Okay. And in the backend, we will have a huge database. Well, it will be simpler for the sake of simplicity for this tutorial. Database with company info, right? Or company data, let's say. Yeah, basically that's it, right? Okay, so we have these simple elements. Chat user interface talks to AI, right? Let's say user query, that's going to be a drawing like this, blah, 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 blah. An AI that is like a guy, right? AI. And then we will have a database, which is like something like that, right? And how do we want this to work? We want user interfaces query to go into the AI, and then the AI has to understand this. So we need to have a very good prompt of how the SQL database is structured. So this is a very, very important part. Prompt database structure, right? Then once the AI gets the user query, it will look at the prompt, obviously that the system prompt that has the database structure. Okay, so these are the AI agent steps. Pretty simple. Well, pretty simple. There are many steps, so it's not that simple, but basically we get a user query. From the user query, we decide what SQL command to execute here. Once we execute it, and we get the data back, we understand it, and based on that, AI will decide what kind of visualization to show based on the data that it got here, right? So we understand the data, and based on that, we will create either a bar plot or, a line plot or whatever, right? And then to create this, obviously, we will have to create some Python code right here, Python code here, and execute it and show it in the front end. So that's the probably hardest part. Once we have that, we also need to give like a natural language answer that says, hey, I executed this SQL query and got this data, and here's your visualization. So this is just blah, blah, blah. So let's just write some lines to explain that. So these are the agent steps. Right now, let's go and actually build or vibe code this in a very simple way, the simplest possible way, so you can use it and execute and build on top of it as you want. All right, I just finished coding this agent. I'll go over the step-by-step of how this works, the tech stack, and show you some demos of how it actually works, which is the most interesting thing. First, the boring part, I set up a React frontend with a lot of components and and Tailwind CSS. If you're interested in that, you can look it up in the GitHub repo that I'm leaving in the description. Then the backend is in Django. It's a very, very simple backend. Even if we have a ton of files here, don't look at them too much. It's okay. We're not building like a production ready app. It's something you can build on top of. So you can just copy this, take it as a base thing and adapt it to your database or something. But it's just a base foundational code. So let's go and I'll go over the step by step of how it works. First, it gets the schema of the database. So in order to make the AI understand what we have in the database, we need to have a way of understanding the structure of the database, right? Like what tables do we have? What column names do we have? So it can execute those SQL queries to get the data. So this is what this function does. As you can see, we call this right in the beginning of this chat function. So let's go here actually. So this is the function that we call every time we get a chat message, right? We basically get the query from the HTTP request. First thing we do, we get the database schema, and I have some logs here for debugging. Then we load the conversation. So I also implemented conversation history, so you can send follow-up responses and remembers what you've been talking about. After it does that, well, it loads the conversation and so on, right? It generates an SQL query. So what does that mean? It understands what the user is asking for, and since it knows how the database is structured here, it will create an SQL query to get the data from the database, right? And this is the prompt for that, very simple prompt using GPT 5.1, and it basically responds with an SQL query based on the schema that we sent here in the prompt. After that, we actually have to go and execute the actual query, right? So this is the third step, executing. Very important thing here. We initialize the connection as read only. So we're not giving AI the permission to write or remove data from the database. So after we execute the SQL query with that important security thing, we have some data in a data frame from Pandas, which is like a data science library that is super, super popular. We get the data and then AI has to interpret that and create some code to create the plot that we show to the user, right? So we get the data here in the data frame here. And the next thing here is, we get the head of the data frame. We don't send the entire. So important thing here, I forgot to mention, we get the data here, the whole data, but to create the visualization code here on the next step, we only send the head of the data. So like the column names and the structure of the data. We don't send the actual information from the database to OpenAI because that could be dangerous as well. So important note there, that's what we do here in CSV. And yeah, we basically generate the visualization code, right? Which is again, another prompt. We send it to GPT 5.1. And as you can see here, we're sending the head of the data frame and the user query. So based on the user query and the structure of the data that we got, we actually create some visualization dynamically, like on the fly. That's super cool. A super, super cool thing. After that, well, it's actually before that, but whatever, it was intended to be after. We generate a summary. So like the AI responds with, hey, here's your visualization code. And it says something about whatever data it's working with, right? So we generate a summary, super simple thing. Again, GPT 5.1. And yeah, that's basically it. So after that, we send everything back to the front end and it's shown there. So let's go and try it, right? So if I go here to localhost, it opens here, AI Data Analyst. I like the dark version always. I didn't really work too much on the UI, but whatever. Let's say, show me something interesting. And it's also very flexible. So I've played with the prompt a lot to make it very flexible and be able to, for example, if you ask something kind of vague and general, it comes up with something interesting to say. So for example, it says, protein and vitamins, they have the same number of distinct products, but protein generates more total sales and higher revenue. So this could actually be very helpful for someone that has an e-commerce, for example, right? So as you can see, protein has the highest average item revenue. Okay, can you show a line plot of how these categories are selling over time. So I want to see, how the trends and how everything is going over time so I can understand how this has evolved. So let's use that, for example. And now, as you can see here in the backend, it's doing all of this. It's first understanding the query, creating an SQL query, executing that. After that, it gets the data and creates some visualization code and also executes that. And after that, it shows everything here in a cool way, as you can see, very cool. And here in the debug info, you can see the SQL query executed and some of the data that it responded with. And this has been like it's obviously dummy data that I just came up with, but it's very cool to see, okay, so like, I don't know, protein has been on the decline since summer 2025 and so on. So like, it's very interesting. And now let's say, okay, show me a smooth version of those lines. So this is a very good feature because it remembers it remembers the lines and the plots it has generated and what I have asked for before. So now if I ask, okay, show me a smooth version of that, it shows like the same thing, but in a smooth way. So we kind of remove the noise a little bit. And now you can say, smooth it more. Let's see if we're stress testing it a bit, but yeah, it does it even more. Okay, nice. So a few security things that we have to mention here, very, very important. The SQL query generation and execution and the Python plotting code generation and execution are in sandboxed environments. What does that mean? They are executed in controlled little boxes, because if you let AI generate and execute code or SQL queries freely, it could suddenly decide to execute some command that destroys all the database or that destroys your whole computer even. So to avoid that, we make it be sandboxed and be like very limited. That's a very important thing that we had to work on. Another possible problem that we worked on is, people jailbreaking. So I have made the prompts a little bit more solid to avoid those jailbreaking attempts. I've also worked on AI hallucinations. So as you saw, if we go to the chat view here, there are some retrying things, right? So sometimes AI will mess up with the column names or something. And, the SQL query suddenly doesn't work because instead of protein, it says proteins, right? And it doesn't work. So what it does here, it automatically retries the SQL queries. So if something fails, we get the error here, we add it to the history and we try again saying, hey, this didn't work, I got this error, try again. And we try a maximum of 3 times. I mean, after 3 times, if it doesn't work, there's something bigger going wrong there. And we don't do the same with the Python visualization code, but we maybe should do that as well. So yeah, those are the security things that I wanted to comment. The demo here, as you can see, looks very cool. In my opinion, it's actually super useful if you're running anything. If you're running a manufacturing company, if you want to run a SaaS as well, you can use it to see, how people work and interact with your product, or you can even sell this as a SaaS, to be honest. And again, just to reiterate, this is just a simple demo kind of thing that you can just take from GitHub and work on top of, right? Also, for example, a thing that you could build or I could build for a future tutorial is data analyst version of this. So like instead of only generating plots and kind of analyzing a little bit, we could have another kind of branch where AI has like a lot of tools that are statistical and data analysis related tools and prompts put in a way that we can have like advanced function calling there and an AI that can give us a lot of insight. This gives us a lot of insight and visualization, which is part of data analysis, but that's a path that we can evolve this to. But anyways, right now what it does again is creates a SQL query, creates visualization code, and executes both to show the response like this. So yeah, you have it here in the GitHub repository. I will go over the setup very, very quickly, right? So basically what you have to do is git clone, open a terminal, right? Execute git clone with this URL here, copy it. Instead of that, you get inside, then inside the backend. So you go to the backend folder, you create a new Python environment and install all the, activate it and install all the dependencies. So here I have the Python environment with everything installed. And after that, you have to migrate. So you have a database running, right? And then you just run the backend with this Python command. On the other side, on the front end, again, you go and install the dependencies and then just run npm run dev, and it will just work by clicking here, and that's it. Okay, so that's a super quick setup guide. You have more info again in the GitHub repository, links in the description. And yeah, basically that's it. Let me know if you find this interesting and you like it. And yeah, thanks for watching and see you next time.